Hello, I'm Mayor John Ducey. We have something special for you today. It's another presentation by our township historian, Gene Donatello, and it's called The Historic Homes of Brick. So hopefully you enjoy it.
Today we're going to look at historic homes of Brick Township. They're interesting, they're old, they're new, various reasons what makes a house historic. It could be its method of construction, it could be its style, it could be even the people who lived in it.
Okay, sounds great.
Some of our early homes were built on the post and beam construction. You can see that in the upper left-hand corner. A sample of post and beam is just down below. We went from there to balloon framing, which is in the left-hand white sheet on the bottom, and the platform framing. The difference, if you notice, platform framing cuts off the first floor from the second floor. Firefighters didn't like the balloon framing because fire starting the first floor, where the furnace was, a cooking stove, could travel up the wall. So by making a platform, they stopped the fire from traveling up the outside walls.
Oh, okay. So it's more common because of the safety.
Right, it was safety features. One of our big homes in the very beginning, of course, was the home of Joseph Brick. His house was on Madison Avenue in Brick. He had a iron forge, and we note him for being, our town is named after him. So we know him for that purpose. Town Hall received a call several years ago from the Director of Parks and Recreation from Charleston, South Carolina. And they gave me the number. I called him back, and he started off introducing himself, and then he said, in 1841, we purchased 21 lampposts from Joseph Brick. And we have 4 of them on the waterfront, and we have the rest in Centennial Park. What we'd like to do is convert them to gas. Can you find the measurements of the posts going up the center of the pole? Fortunately, this was Monmouth County at the time when Joseph Brick died in 1848, and they inventoried every single thing that a person owned. And Monmouth County up on Sims Road has a record of all that, all on microfilm, and I was able to find it for them. So when I gave it to him, he said, "What do you want me to turn?" I said, "I want a picture of the lamppost." So that's how I got them. But if anyone goes there, maybe they could take a picture for us.
So Madison Avenue is in Lakewood now?
Yes.
Okay, and
yes.
that's where Joseph Brick's house was?
Right. It was all brick at one time.
Yes. Okay. And do you know what's there now, where his house used to be?
No.
No?
Probably a hotel.
Right.
If you remember, they built a lot of hotels in Lakewood.
Yes.
Burge House on Winding River Road. In, I guess it was about 1980, someone told me that there was a house in brick on the Underground Railroad. That kind of shocked me. So eventually I found the house. I went, and I usually do, knocked on the door, and a gentleman answered the door, and I told him I was looking for it. "Oh yes, this was the house. Come in." Took me on a tour of the building. We went down the basement. He showed me a bulge in the wall where there's a tunnel down to the Manasquan River. And took me up to the second floor where they hid the slaves under the eaves of the porch. And we finished the tour, and I said to him, he and his wife, I said, "You know, we know there was never an underground railroad to this area, so what's the story?" Well, it came out of a children's story book. The author of the book, Augustus Yule Seaman, was friends with the owner of the house in the 1930s, and she used it in her book. And it was a whole tour of 2 young girls traveling up the Manasquan River by canoe, the different sites that they saw. They came to the house, and they visited the house, and there was a woman there who told them that her husbands were away fighting in the Civil War, and we all went from there. But it's a beautiful house. It's an interesting house, because in the basement is a cooling device. The basement, when last time I was in it, had a dirt floor, and there was a little stream running through it, and came out of like a tub higher up on the wall. And that was the stream that came in the front of the building, ran through that tub, and out the back of the building down to the river. They put clay tubs in that water, and it kept their food cold.
Oh, wow.
Is that amazing?
That is amazing.
It was still there when I went to visit the house.
Wow.
On Princeton Avenue was the Havens and Havens House. It was called the Road to Wardell's Neck. You know, they named roads at that time by what was at the end of the road. So Wardell lived at the end of the road, so it became Wardell's Neck.
Okay.
It was really Princeton Avenue, we know it. But it was a general store by the Havens brothers. They would order things for you in the mail. They had a special tonic. You can see a bottle there that the tonic that they sold was good for anything that ailed you. I don't know what was in it, and I wouldn't drink it, but it was good for anything that ailed you.
And there's no recipe left?
Not yet.
Okay.
On Route 88 going west was the Jonathan Goebel House. It was the road to Bricksburg, which was what Lakewood was called at the time. Goebel was a businessman. He also served on the township government. He also served as a recruiter. The house was built about 1830. It's still there today. The bottom picture shows what it looks like today. There's a big addition to the back. There's all offices in there.
Okay.
It's no longer a home. But people would look at that house today and say, well, it's Georgian style. And yes and no. Georgian style was an early style of houses that we built here. Everything was symmetric. The door in the center, windows on each side, 3 across, 2 chimneys. 1 chimney is missing here. You can see the older house had the chimney. Yeah. But when we won the Revolutionary War, everyone said we no longer owe allegiance to King George, and we changed it to federal style.
Okay. So the style remained, they just changed the name.
Right. The style was maybe some touches of difference. The Richard Burhaus on Route 88 still stands. Richard Burr and his family owned the forge at Forge Pond. And in 1848, we must have had tremendous rains because the forge was, the dam was washed away. I'm thinking we lost a couple of dams in that storm in 48. So Richard Burr had to find a new business. Now what was coming along in 1850 was a new town. So what did he do? He applied for a license to operate an inn and tavern at his home. And we had that. And that building was the town in which the first township committee was held in February of 1850.
With the tavern in it?
With the tavern. Well, you know, taverns, when they had a tavern, you could serve food.
Okay.
All right? But if you had a tavern at that time, they barred it during public meetings. Hence we have the word bar today. Bars came down from the ceiling from the side and closed it.
Wow, okay.
So they didn't serve liquor. We talked about balloon construction, and this is the newest house out of New and Brick, the first to have balloon construction. It was the Mangold House on Drum Point Road. Notice it has a little of the old federal style with a porch added to it and a peak. But that was you can't tell from the outside.
Okay.
They look the same.
Right.
Percy Gatt built his house in 1920. Percy Gatt was a World War I veteran. And he was a carpenter before he went in. When he went to the service, came out, he survived the battles, came out, and went back into the carpentry business. But he also carved decoys on the side because he used decoys to hunt with. One of those decoys became very well known. It's up in the upper right-hand corner on the postage stamp. In 1988, they came out.
Okay.
And that decoy is in a museum in New Hampshire right now.
That's interesting. How did it get up there?
It got up there before it even went on the stamp, because that's where the Postal Service got it from.
Okay.
How did it get up there? They have a display of hunting equipment, and that's how it got up there. Someone brought it up there. It's amazing how things get around.
Yes, yes.
This is a town building, the Hults House. The Hults family owned a brickyard which was across the street. This house was actually moved to this location in the late 1930s. It was across Herbertsville Road and where the fire school is today. And they had a brickyard there. It was earlier owned by the Tilton family, then the Hults family. The Hults family owned a great deal of land around. Mm-hmm. We have Godfrey Manor, that was all their property.
Oh, wow.
Where the Dunkin' Donuts is next door to this building, that was their property. They had a store actually there next door,
okay.
A little general store.
So when they moved the house, they moved it all in one piece, or they?
Well,
Is it in pieces?
when I go in the basement, I have a feeling that the front part was an addition. This peak in the front was an addition, and the original part was in the back.
Okay, I can see that.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you look at the construction, because we can get on the basement of this.
Right.
You know, we can't get in all basements. Not all houses have basements.
True.
It also has a coal bin. You know what a coal bin is?
I do not.
No. When you had coal furnaces in a house, you had a separate section for storing the coal. And they
Okay.
called it a coal bin.
All right.
C-O-A-L, coal bin. The Havens Homestead, this was on Laurelton Circle, and this was the home of Emma Havens' young family. And what happened to the house when they went to build that short little shopping center that's there? There was I don't remember what was in there. There's just a tax place in there now.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay.
With, was the windmill was there, the 7-Eleven
The windmill,
for a while.
yes.
Okay.
And when they went to build it, Mary Young, the daughter of Emma Havens Young, donated the building to the town to use as a library. That's when the town hall was at the Town Hall Shopping Center on Cedar Bridge.
Yes.
And they brought it down there but never got to use it. It was just not in good condition. But that shows it being moved down Route 70. This is a Strickland House. I came on it, I have it on Havens Cove Road, and I thought that's where I saw it. But that was the earlier version. The bottom right picture is the earlier, the most recent, when I took a picture of it and went up and knocked on the door again. And a young lady answered. And I told her I was looking for information on the building and the Strickland family. And she said, well, she said, this building is owned by the Archdiocese of Trenton. And we nuns use it as a getaway and a retreat. Now I'm wondering, is this the same property that we're talking about today?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either, because my memory said Havens Cove Road, which is not Laurel Avenue where the property is today.
Right.
So I don't know who owns it today. We have to look that up and see.
Yeah, sounds good.
Laurelton and the Pines. Laurelton and the Pines was a collection of log cabins. And it was built for hunters because it's right adjacent to Forge Pond, and that was a great duck hunting area. So when you go in some of these houses, originally they didn't have they didn't have flooring, they had dirt floors.
Okay.
They didn't have plumbing, and everything was outside. It was just for hunters. And eventually people started moving into them and dressing them up, adding to them, and using them as houses. If you go look at some of them today, they're covered with vinyl siding or Texture 111, but they're log cabins.
Oh, that is
Some have been
interesting.
torn down, of course, but that's it.
So can you still see the logs from the inside?
From the inside, that's why I have this picture. You can see inside this is a house on 4th Street that is a chimney in the center, and they had the logs, you could see. And of course, it would never pass today's code because the rafter beams are like 3 feet apart.
Okay. Yep. A lot of things don't pass code, you know.
Well, yes. Yeah. This is another log cabin on Red Wing Avenue. The original part on the left was built with logs from when they cut down logs to build the airport, Osborneville Airport at Brick. When they built, the logs from there went to build that left-hand side. And then the right-hand side was added in 1947.
Okay.
When you go inside, you get a feeling of warmth in this building.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the house or the people who live there, but you get a feeling of warmth in there. It's really tremendous to see. And you can see the cat is enjoying the view from up there.
Yes, up in the rafters.
We have a different type of log cabin, a vertical log cabin, built by Henry Bonhag. Henry had a store. Do you remember the store that always had all the pinwheels out on Mantua-Looking Road?
Yes.
Well, originally he had a store there.
Ed's Hardware. I think it was.
Ed's Hardware, yes. And that was his store at one time. It's passed down over the ages. It's been a store for a long time. But anyhow, he, in his location, built a vertical log cabin. And when I talked to him about it, he said it was easier for him to move the narrow logs than the big logs. So that's why he built it that way.
Okay. I've never heard of a vertical log cabin before.
No. Well, he developed it. The Johnson House and Barn on Mantoloking Road, this is across from the Osborneville School.
Okay.
Okay, Johnson family had a farm out there, and this was their old building is in the left-hand corner. The new building is in the lower right-hand corner. Quite a difference in the two. And you can see they had a Johnson's plumbing supply or a supply store, and they had a barn with they kept animals, and they had a farm there, quite a bit of land. As a matter of fact, we have their sleigh in our museum, the Johnson sleigh. They used it for logging.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that.
So, you know, people had a lot of occupations that they went through besides farming. Enoch Robbins' house on Route 88. Beautiful house. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, that's the original building from the house. Then the front was added on in 1861.
Okay.
Okay, but it really takes on a nice, and it didn't have a porch. The porch is, again, a later addition. But it had and one of the owners of Robbins, Enoch Robbins, was a sea captain. And he traveled around the world, and he brought back many exotic things. So when you go into the house, it has many items that you would not normally find in brick. I mean, look at the marble fireplace there, the lanterns that were there, the chandelier. These were things you wouldn't normally find in brick, so he brought them back with him.
All right.
Then he and his brother had a cranberry bog on Route 88. I'm trying to think of the tree store. The store that's across the street is they sell trees and plants and things. Going towards Point Pleasant, it's on your right-hand side. Well, there was a pond across the street.
Yes.
There was a pond across the street. Someone filled in part of it.
Okay.
But it was
it's
much
still there.
larger.
It's still a waterway.
Yeah. But
People
there was
ice
much
skate there
larger.
still.
Yes.
On that pond.
Yes. They had a cow barn. This was their cow barn. This was their horse barn. And this was their two-seat outhouse.
Two-seat?
Two-seater, yes.
Okay. Separate doors or no?
No, one door.
One door.
Well, you know, one hall was smaller than the other, so it was for a child.
Okay.
Okay. You haven't been in the service, have you?
No.
No, well, yes, it was all one in the service. The Alonzo Van Note House on Drum Point Road. He was big in the blueberry business and in the cranberry business. His bog was behind what is today Brick Plaza, where the stores are. You know, there's a stream that runs through there. Mm-hmm. And it ran from there to the next development, which was brick development out on, I can't think of the name of the road now, but it was about a half a mile long, this bog. And he was well known in the business. You can see them picking the cranberries here. This was his cranberry sorting shed. And we have his cranberry sorting machine in our barn.
Oh, wow.
So
the bogs are mostly water, right?
Well, they're grown in regular land.
Okay.
And then they harvest them in water.
Okay.
What they do is they would flood the bog, and they'd send a thing with paddles in it, and it would break the cranberries off of the plants they're growing on. They would then float to the top. Ah. They would then round them up, but at this point, they were hand-picked. They would hire people to hand-pick them.
So that was before they did the flooding?
Before they did the flooding, yes. And I don't know what the pay was, but it was ridiculously small from what we think of today.
Right.
But if they got 2 cents for a quarter keg or about that.
And all you can eat cranberries.
Yes. And this is Muda Patterson's house. She's the daughter. And she was a cranberry farmer also. Her husband had another business, but the women loved her because she hired all women. Hmm. And we're talking back in the 1920s and 30s.
Right.
And her house is still there, and that's it today. It hasn't changed. I just put this in the Cape Brenton Cabin. See how things evolve over the years. This on the upper left is the original building. The center was one of the additions. And then you can see in the bottom circle is what it looks like today.
Mm-hmm. I have some friends that live over there. It looks familiar.
Yes. Yeah, they, people added to them because they were little buildings at one time. On Herbertsville Road, not Herbertsville, but on Cedar Lane, which is now Schoolhouse Road, was the Cooper Herbert Gatt house. Ellie Cooper's in the upper right-hand corner, and she was I'm trying to think, midwife. She was the local midwife. Then the lower picture is of Laura Gatt, and Laura Gatt became a nurse. But they all lived in the house that's in the center. Laura Gatt then goes into World War II as a nurse. She joins the WACs and becomes a nurse there and ends up in Waco, Texas. Over the years, people find pictures in their collections. And they found this picture, and on the back it said Eleanor Norcross. And they went online and they found the Eleanor Norcross room at the Herbertsville Methodist Church. So they sent the picture to the Herberts Methodist Church and wanted to find out who Eleanor Norcross was. Well, they knew who Eleanor Norcross was, but they didn't know who this picture was. But fortunately at the time, Curtis Havens V was still living. And I showed it to him, and he said, "It's Aunt Lottie," of course, Charlotte Pettit, which was Eleanor Norcross's mother.
Okay.
All right. Well, how'd they get the picture? Well, Laura Gatt lived across the street from them, and they were friends, and so she gave them the picture. She took it to Iowa with her. After she married, she went to Texas, then to Iowa, and lived in Iowa, and she kept the picture. So the family was going through these pictures. So I had to call them up and tell, maybe my stories are getting too long, but
that's right.
I called up Iowa to tell them who the picture was. And I asked them while I'm on that, "What do you know about the Gatt family?" So she said, "My mother was a Gatt." So I said, "Oh, okay." So I went through the process. I was looking for Mende, Gatt Mende. And she said, "Would you like to talk to Laura's daughter?" So I said, "Certainly." Well, she's in, I forget what town, what city, the state she was in. So she said, "I'll call her up," and gave me the number. I called her up, and we talked. And at the very end of the conversation, I said, "Well, when did they live in brick?" "Oh, they never lived in brick." I said, "Well, we have a baby buried in the Osborneville Cemetery between the maternal parents named Baby Robert Mende, and buried here." And she said, "There was always a rumor going around that there was another brother, but we never really knew about it." So she wanted a copy of a picture of the tombstone, sent it to her, and another story cleared up.
Okay.
The Tilton Herbert Osborne House. This is on Herbertsville Road, across from the Herbertsville Firehouse. It's the Osborneville family living there. It's been in the Osborneville family for over 100 years, and it's still in the Osborneville family. You can see what it looked like on the right-hand side and what it looks like today. It was actually closer to the road, and the county took the curve out of the road and gave them the choice of being right on the road or moving their house back. Well, they had land behind them, so they moved the house back, and it survived. The Pettit house on Cedar Lane or Schoolhouse Road. Brenton Pettit went to fight in the Civil War. Well, he really didn't fight. He was a cook. He was 38 years old when he joined up, and they took him.
Yeah, 38.
Yes, and he left his wife and 5 children. And this was his family house. And he goes off to fight, and he had his kitchen on a train, so it was moved from place to place. And as a result, his checks, his pay never caught up with him. And his wife would go for maybe a month or 2 months without any pay. Now, she had 5 children to feed. It became very difficult. And she couldn't read or write herself, so she had to depend upon other people. But what she did was she sent 2 of the oldest children to live with other people and work for them. And this way she could take care of them and raise some money. Meanwhile, when his money came in. When he came home from the war, they dropped him off at Freehold, and he walked from Freehold down to Schoolhouse Road. And when he comes down the street, his children are hollering to their mother, "A stranger is coming."
Okay.
But they didn't recognize him.
How many years was it?
It was 4 years.
4 years, okay.
Of course, and he aged in that time and came home. Maybe he had the beard when he came home, who knows. But those are stories passed down. The Wagner House on Winding River Lane. The original building is that building in the middle there with the porch hanging over. But what was unique about it, not only was its age of 1790, but you see the staircase and the door and the closet?
Yes.
Well, that brought you up to a room upstairs. But there were 2 rooms upstairs. You couldn't get from that room to the other room. You had to come down the stairway, go across the room, up the other stairway to get to the other room.
There's a similar stairway like that?
Same thing in a closet.
Huh.
Yep. You know, they did that because you close them off and hold the heat in.
Okay.
On Herbert Lane is the Mount House, the Herbert Mount House. This is where the Herbert family settled, and this is where they had so many offspring that we get the name Herbertsville from this part of the family. The original part of the building is that on the left, the addition is on the right. We call it the Mount House because Art Mount lived in there, and when he passed away, he left that house to the Brick Historical Society. And we really couldn't do anything with it. We were tied up with another building, so we did sell it to a family, and they were in the process of restoring the interior of the building.
Okay.
This is another Osborne House on Herbertsville Road. It's interesting because the original house, you can see the original house to the left, the new house to the right, and whenever you had additions like this, you had stairways on the second floor of 4 and 5 steps to get from the old building to the new building. And you can see that here. They had a barn. This was a barn on the left-hand side. It's built in mortise and tenon construction, as is the original building built that way. Sears Roebuck Kit Houses, we have several of them in town, well, more than several. 1930s was the decade that Sears put out the houses, and it stopped when the war came about. It went into other types of construction. But we have one at the Russ House on Beverly Beach Boulevard. You can see it being constructed here. I love the picture with the girls in the field with all the flowers.
Yeah, that's great.
And then you can see the finished product up on the hill there.
Looks
as
great.
It looks today.
Looks very nice.
Yes. And you go in the basement. Again, I knocked on the door, and the couple invited me in. And I don't know, I wonder sometimes. I didn't know the people, but they would invite me in, which was great. Because I went down the basement, we looked at the markings on the rafters to see how they put it together and all.
I guess you have a friendly face. People trust it.
I don't know. Now, many people know me now, but at the time, people had no idea who I was.
So in the Sears Roebuck catalog, was there a bunch of different houses, or was it just one?
They had a special catalog of houses, yes.
Of houses, okay.
Now, the picture that I showed you, if we can go back.
They still needed a builder, though, right? Or was it do yourself?
You really needed a builder.
Okay.
This was the front of the catalog. Sears Household Designs of the 30s. And this was just one of the houses that I could show on there. But it had, I would say there were maybe 70 pages to it.
Okay. Yeah.
And then when you bought the house, you got instructions of how to put it together.
And it got delivered by truck,
by
train?
By truck, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All at once, or was it in pieces, in sections or something where you built a little bit?
It was. Your 2x4s were all numbered and separate, and you had to assemble all that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a prefab today where you get a wall or something. Today they bring half of the house or a quarter of the house there. No, you had to put it together. Another unique building we have is all steel construction. The Smith brothers, who built Lake Riviera, and they built Riviera Beach. Well, this is in the Riviera Beach development, and it's made of steel. It was built in sections. You can see them putting it together. It was bolted together on the ground, and they put it up, and it's still lived in today. When last I was in it, the kitchen had stainless steel sink, said when they said steel, it was steel.
Right.
You couldn't pick up television reception or radio reception in the building. You had to have an outside antenna to get it.
Wonder how the cell phone reception is now.
I have no idea. Yeah, it would be interesting to find out. Sally Snyder was a summer resident, and she lived in a houseboat in the summertime. She came, spent her time there. She was also a sailor. She went, sailboats.
Okay.
She went in sailboat races. But one of the things that she became known for was her carvings of decoys. And I looked around for a carving because she's been gone for a while. And my barber had a carving.
Oh, wow.
Jack Pasola in Point Pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
He has a carving of hers, so he loaned it to me to take a picture of it.
All right. Maybe they're up in New Hampshire.
Not that, they're local. She was an award winner. She won quite a number of awards for her decoys. And she didn't carve working decoys. She carved ones that you would put on display.
Mm.
The old Herbertsville School, in operation from 1858 to 1949. It never had running water. And it's a home today. 1990's photograph of it is a home. What's interesting, last time I was in it, still had a cloakroom. You know what a cloakroom is? Where students would hang their coats.
Yes.
And it was still there. They had all hooks on the wall. It was exempt. And I put this picture in because I just love those little urchins out there in front of the building.
So the people that live there, they know it was a school at one point?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And it never had running water, so the students had to use an outhouse. They had to go to a neighbor's house for drinking water.
Mm-hmm. Well, can't just use the water fountain, huh?
No water fountains, no. The George P. Wooley House. I don't know what state this is in today. It was on Route 88. It was a home, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner. Then it was a business. It was a realtor. Then the realtor sold that land to Walgreens, and they put up a Walgreens on it, and he moved it over to the other side of the road. And I see red X's on it. I guess that's an indication not to go in the building.
Yes, it's red X's are basically, if there's a fire, the fireman should only fight it from the outside.
Yes, yeah. And I can understand, because this building is all mortise and tenon put together, that it could collapse on you very easily.
Mm-hmm.
The Herbert Coleman House on Gunning Club Road. We know it as Ridge Road, right, where our public works buildings are.
Yes.
Clara Strode Colvin, she was married and divorced, but her husband bought a house on Gunning Club Road and 52 acres of land. And when they separated, and she stayed there and lived there with her mother for a number of years, but they were Impressionist artists. They're only known mother-daughter Impressionist artists around. And you can see one of the paintings of Clara Strode. But it's a very interesting relationship that she had. They moved here from New Orleans, and they went to school. She went to school here and became an artist, but they lived in East Orange on a full-time basis. And then they started coming down to the house here, and they made this their full-time home. And today it's part of the wildlife preserve, their property.
Okay. The house is still standing?
The house, wow. This is what it looks like today.
Okay.
In 2002, the Historic Preservation Commission from Brick wanted to go up there and preserve this building. So I went up there about 2 weeks ahead of them and checked it out. They have a ranger living in a trailer alongside this. They were going to put him in this building.
Mm-hmm.
So I went up to check it out, and I found a dead deer alongside the driveway, a burnt-out Volkswagen on the other side, a hot water heater and a washing machine against the art studio. I couldn't get into the building because there was a dead raccoon in the middle and tires, truck tires, in the entranceway. So I called up the state, and they hollered at me, "You sure you can't go up there? We have evidence up there." Do you remember we had the problem between the lobstermen at sea? You don't remember that?
No,
Oh, yeah, we had a problem. They were firing at each other.
Okay.
And they had all their lobster pots there. So I said, I didn't go by your evidence. It's out in the field. I wouldn't even walk by it because it's all full of grass. I said, but this is what I found. I told them what I just told you. They said, we'll call you back in 2 weeks to go up there. They called me back in 2 weeks. That cleaned it up. And I took the Preservation Commission up there. But once we got in the building, parts of it weren't even connected to the foundation because it was eaten away. Because no one was in there. Raccoons had been in there, and so but we still would have taken it because we knew it could be repaired. We had an architect on the commission at that time, and he said it could still be repaired. So we said, yes, well, we would like to have it. Well, you can only go up when the gate is open, and we'll give you a 1/4 acre of land. Well, that wasn't going to do us any good, a 1/4 acre of land. And we could only go up when the gate was open, so we couldn't really restore it.
Right.
So we turned it down.
Okay. Could be collapsed by now, maybe.
I think they had to take it down. It became a dangerous thing. Herbert House on Herbertsville Road. Lizzie Herbert lived in the house, Elizabeth Herbert, and she and 3 sisters, a mother, father, and a brother. Had 1 room downstairs and 1 room upstairs. They had built a curtain between the room for the girls. Then they moved out to a cabin on the side. He lived there. And the girls lived up on the 2nd floor, and their parents lived up there. But Lizzie Herbert, I mean, people would see her in the 80s and almost into the 90s with her push mower cutting her grass, and they would comment on it. Eventually, she didn't have running water in the house. She had a well, and I think we have pictures of it. Yes, we have her pantry, the 1 room that was on the 1st floor with the stairway. Notice the stairway and a closet going upstairs.
Yes.
This was her bed in the corner on the 1st floor. This was her well, and she had an outhouse. And she fell and broke her hip going out to the outhouse.
Okay.
She was now 90 years old.
Yes.
And she had to go to the hospital, go to rehab, and the visiting nurses would not let her back in the house because there was no running water and no bath facilities. But she insisted she was going back there.
Okay.
And they gave in to her. They said, you can go back there, but you have to have a chemical toilet, and you have to have bottled water delivered. And she did that, and she lived 2 more years, and then died of old age.
In the house?
In the house.
Okay.
And she had family around who would look in on her. But it was interesting that she survived. And that's the house today. We have it at the Havens Homestead Museum.
Right.
And that's Havens Homestead Museum. We have a number of buildings. The corn crib, well, whatever we have really came from brick. So when you come out there, we're open on Saturdays from 10 to 12. You can call us up, make a special appointment. We'll be there. We had a group there yesterday. In all that heat, they came. And it's a great place. You have to come and see it. Well, you've seen it, so
yes.
You know what it's like.
I've been there a few times, yes.
Yes. It's a fun place to bring people to because they're amazed
Right.
at it.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, people should take advantage while it's there.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me this time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Mr. Donatello. It's great. You know, it's going to be preserved forever. We can see it on YouTube and on our B20, and
I hope so.
it's going to be great.
Yes, it comes out good. And thank you for your work.